Hey there! In today's video, we're talking about how you can get sharp photos and videos with your macro 25mm, 100mm, and microscope lens. A macro lens is a specialized lens that allows you to get up close and personal with your subject, allowing you to capture intricate details in your photography. Our macro lenses offer a shallow depth of field, which mimics the human eye. At SANDMARC, it's never our desire to replace the iPhone's native lenses. Instead, we offer lenses that provide stylistic flexibility for your photography and filmmaking needs. On the native iPhone lens, you can take beautiful macro shots. But if you look at the photos, you can see that everything in the frame is in focus. With the SANDMARC lenses, you get a shallow depth of field in your photos, typically seen in professional macro photography. This organic look feels like it was shot with a professional DSLR camera rather than an iPhone. We offer two different focal lengths for our macro lens, the 25mm and the 100mm. The 25mm, perfect for up-close shots, stationary objects, and the 100mm, offering the same intense sharp macro view, but offering a little bit more space for moving objects, videography, and experimental mediums. Our microscope lens, a highly magnified specialty lens, produces 40 times the magnification, enabling you to capture details never before possible with an iPhone. At such an extreme magnification, you can make out individual details on your subjects, observing wildlife, fabric, everyday items, and much, much more. So the first thing you're going to want to do before you start shooting is make sure your iPhone camera and your SANDMARC lens are free of any debris, smudges, or dirt. This is super easy because every lens kit comes with their own microfiber cloth, which is perfect for cleaning the smooth surfaces of the iPhone and the lens. So you want to take the microfiber cloth and then just make small circular motions on the lens so you can get everything off. And you want to be delicate so you don't cause any friction. And then do the same thing on the SANDMARC lens, making sure you do the front and then the back. You just want to make sure everything is clean so nothing hinders the ability of the iPhone to focus through the lens. So the next step is to take your iPhone and your case and attach them together. So you just make sure you pop it right on, making sure that the camera and the mounts are flush. And depending on what model of iPhone you get, the case is going to look different. This is the standard case for the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Okay, now that you've gotten the case on, it's time to attach the lens to the case mount. So as you're going to see on these cases, there's a specialized threading over the camera lens of the iPhone. And so you're going to take your lens like this and kind of pop it into the threading and then twist till it is nice and even and secure like this. On all the lenses, it's going to be a little bit different to kind of get the feel for it, but you just sort of kind of twist it in, make sure that it's really secure and that it's flush with the mount like this. Even, really secure, you don't want any shakes or anything like that. If you are getting double vision or all over blurry images, we recommend reattaching the lens until the image is clear. With macro and micro photography, some of the subject will be blurry because of the depth of field, but you want the in-focus portion of the shot to be extremely sharp, like this. So once it's attached properly, you're ready to shoot. Okay, so before we get started, there's a few quick tips I need to go over first. When shooting with a macro lens or a microscope lens, you need a lot of light. You don't want too much light because you don't want to overexpose your image, but you do need a lot of light in order to capture all the details, especially if the lens is super close to the subject. So a place like this is very nice because it's all very even lighting, and even though it's an overcast day, the lighting is diffused, so it's strong but not direct. If you have direct sunlight on a subject, it's going to become overexposed. And while your phone does have settings to underexpose an image or take down the highlights, maybe when you're editing, it's just not going to be the same as shooting in perfect or near perfect conditions for photography. In those particular cases where the sun is going down or you're in a particularly, shady spot, sometimes it's really useful to bring a portable light like the SANDMARC bicolor and RGB light that we offer. It'll just give a really nice, subtle, diffused fill light that can just really nicely expose your subject so you don't have to artificially bump up the exposure on your phone. In order to get stabilized shots, there's a few options. You can either shoot handheld, based on the position of your subject and your ability to hold the camera steady. You could shoot with a tripod, a creator grip, or even a film rig. It's really just up to your preference and how close or far away you need to be from your subject. Another quick tip is making sure your macro control is turned on your iPhone. Go to Settings, then Camera, then Macro Control. Toggle it on so when shooting, you can disable it when it switches on to macro mode unexpectedly. So let's start shooting with the macro 25mm lens. So with the 25mm lens, you're going to have to be extremely close to your subject in order to get a sharp photo. The minimum focusing distance is about 10 to 15 millimeters, which typically isn't a problem if your subject is stationary and accessible. To get sharp pictures and video on the native iPhone camera app when using the 25mm macro lens, there are a few steps that you need to follow. First, tap to focus. You're going to tap on the screen so a yellow square will appear around the subject that you want to focus on. Here you can see the focus is sharp and the background gets gradually softer. Next, you're going to swipe up and down to adjust the exposure. This will make the image brighter or darker. You can also use AE or AF lock feature. This will lock the focus and exposure by tapping and holding the object you want to focus on until a yellow box appears. You can use portrait mode when using the 25mm macro lens. If you have an iPhone with a dual lens camera system, you can use the portrait mode to get more magnification. Here you can see the difference between the two photos. Okay, next we're going to shoot with the macro 100mm. This macro lens has a minimum focusing distance of 53mm, so it gives you a bigger distance to shoot with. So in case you're shooting around a pointing object like a cactus, for instance, you won't get poked or you'll still stay a nice distance away from your subject. To get sharp pictures and video on the native iPhone camera app, first tap to focus. A yellow box will appear, which will indicate what is in focus. This area right here is in focus because it is sharp and the background is gradually getting softer around it. Next, you can swipe up or down to adjust the exposure or left to right. This will make the image brighter or darker. You can use AE or AF lock feature as well. By tapping and holding the object you want to have in focus until a yellow box appears on screen. Then swipe up or down to adjust the exposure. The focus and exposure will stay locked until you tap the screen again. You can use portrait mode when using the 25mm macro lens. If you have an iPhone with a dual lens camera system, you can use the portrait mode to get more magnification. Here you can see the difference between the two photos. Macro photography can be quite difficult, but if you are patient enough and experiment with different angles and lighting techniques, you will be rewarded by creative, unique photography and videography. And the last lens we're going to shoot on today is the microscope lens. When using the microscope, you need to have your lens touching your subject, gently pressing against it so your lens can capture all the details. Your microscope comes with a light built in. There are two brightness levels. Depending on whether it is dimly lit or shiny, you might have to experiment between the two brightness levels to see which one best fits your subject. To use the microscope lens and focus it with the native camera app, tap on that object on the screen. A yellow box will appear, which will indicate what is in focus. Here you see this area right here is in focus because it is sharp and the background is gradually getting softer around it. Next, you can swipe up or down to adjust the exposure or left to right. This will make the image brighter or darker. You can use AE or AF lock feature as well. By tapping and holding the object you want to have in focus until a yellow box appears on screen. Then swipe up or down to adjust the exposure. The focus and exposure will stay locked until you tap the screen again. You can use portrait mode. If you have an iPhone with a dual lens camera system, you can use the portrait mode to get more magnification. Here you can see the difference between the two photos. The microscope lens has an incredible 40 times magnification, but this can be tricky for photographers because it really is only going to allow you to focus on one area of your subject very specifically. It can take some experimenting and also some creative problem solving, but when you get a great shot on a microscope lens, it's unlike anything else you've ever seen in photography. We hope you found this video helpful, and be sure to comment in the section below if you have any other questions. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to our channel for more content just like this. Thanks for watching and happy shooting!